This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
You know, I must say I'm disappointed with the defense policy update. There's no sense of urgency here. You know, you've got war waging in Ukraine. We just witnessed Iran attack Israel last night. We have seen war throughout the Middle East and in the Red Sea. And we are witnessing a powder keg that's about to explode in the South China Sea and the Strait of Taiwan. And yet all the promises that you're making and the explorations that you're doing doesn't happen until really after the next election. So in typical Liberal fashion, it's dithering, it's delays, it's kick the can down the road. We're hearing stories about our troops using food banks and relying on food donations. You said yourself that the recruitment and retention crisis put the Canadian Armed Forces in a death spiral. You have said that we're short 6,700 military housing units right now, and we have troops that are living in their cars, they're living rough, they're living in tent cities, and we hear those stories all the time. So, you know, you look at the media that cover the DPU, the titles are, you know, New Liberal Defense Policy, in no hurry to face dangerous global realities. Don't be fooled, Trudeau doesn't care about defense in the National Post. Globe and Mail is our outdated defense policy. Canada isn't prepared for today's threats. You know, it just goes on and on that, Globe and Mail also had one. Canada's new defense policy commits to exploring instead of committing. So I think when you look at what academics are saying, what military experts are saying, what the news are saying, is that there's a lack of seriousness here in the defense policy update. So my question to you, Minister Anand in 2022, when she kicked off the DPU, said that there was going to be aggressive options to get Canada to 2% of GDP spending to meet the NATO commitment. And there's no commitment in this DPU. Why?
Yeah, thanks very much, James, and for sharing some of those newspaper headlines. I think you missed a couple. In particular, I'd point out the one today in today's Globe and Mail, where they interviewed the Chief of Defense, who I think spoke very strongly about the value of this policy update. But rather than debate those things, I would just simply remind you that this investment, and this investment's layered on the work that we did with Strong, Secure, and Engaged, which actually raised defense spending over an 8-year period by nearly 70%. And what this will result in by 2029 is from the very dark days of 2014, the last days in which you were a parliamentary secretary of defense, where defense spending, where defense spending actually fell below 1% of GDP. This will result cumulatively in almost a tripling of our defense spending, and I think what we've been able to demonstrate is a strong,
let me say this,
upward
Minister,
trajectory
that,
of defense spending
in the time that we were in
days.
government, I'm very proud of our record in supporting our troops. We never had troops lined up at food banks. We never had troops living rough. We never had our international allies say they can't depend on Canada. That's all on this Liberal government. That is not on previous government. And so let's talk about the housing, because you have put in here, you say $300 million, but there's only $8 million that's committed to housing at this point in time, and there is $0 committed for this fiscal year. There's $0 committed in the DPU for next fiscal year. You said we're 6,700 homes short for our troops, and we know that over the last 2 years that National Defense only built 38 homes in 2 years. That isn't going to close a gap in 6,700 homes, nor will the $300 million get us there.
Great question. So let me share with you some of the things we're doing. And you may have heard our housing ministers already announced that we are investing not only money into the building of affordable rental housing for Canadians, which will include members of the armed forces, but we're going to leverage the value of some of the property that the National Defense Department currently holds, so that we are already in very important discussions with municipalities and with private industries to form public-private partnerships to get housing built rapidly. There are a number of really important initiatives, and I know we're all looking forward, and I'm sure you are, to the budget that will be released on Tuesday, which will create I think we will be able to reveal a real urgent sense of getting housing built. There are real opportunities for members of the Canadian Armed Forces. We've consulted with them. I've been to those bases. We've heard them very clearly about what they need, and we're responding to that with not just an investment of money, but new approaches to getting it done.
In the last minute that I have here, there is in the DPU a commitment to replacing our aging Victoria-class submarines. It says conventional subs. The Prime Minister at the announcement last week said that nuclear subs are also an option. Can you explain the contradiction between the DPU and the Minister? And are we going to go ahead with purchasing submarines that can go under ice to patrol our Arctic when you look at the proliferation of submarines around the world, and protect our coastlines from all three sides to ensure that we are protected here and know what's happening in our Arctic waters?
Yes. Yes, we are going to.
How much?
What's that?
How much is it going to cost?
Well, and that's actually the work that's underway. When we said we're exploring the work that needs to be done, we're working with the Royal Canadian Navy and the Canadian Armed Forces and the Department of National Defence to determine what their operational requirements are. And as the Prime Minister indicated in his remarks last Monday, nothing's off the table. We're going to listen to them. And we're also working with our allies. We'll also then explore what's the best way to respond to that. But the Prime Minister has been very clear. The document makes clear. We're going to do it because Canada's national defence requires it.
Minister, on December 7th, you were at committee and spoke of the shortage and the low production numbers for artillery shells. You said that there was a commitment for increasing fourfold the production in Canada. You told me at the end of that meeting, you said that would take place this year. When will the newly produced shells be rolling off Canadian production lines?
As quickly as Canadian industry can produce them, but they have told us...
You said this year.
What I told them is Canada would do its part this year. We have. We've now committed $300 million, and we're working with industry to make the necessary investments that industry said they required, and we now have the money to negotiate the long-term contracts, which was also the certainty that industry said that they required.
That's great for announcements. On what date this year will the production target be hit of a fourfold increase?
Okay. Last Monday, Canada announced the money that will allow industry to now move forward. And now there is work that will take place between the Department of National Defence and industry. I've also engaged with the ISED minister to move on that as quickly as possible. But Canada did what Canada needed to do, and now we'll work with industry to deliver that.
Are you walking back the answer that you made then, that it would take place this year?
Again, to be really clear, I said we would take action to cause that to happen, and we've taken that action to cause that to happen. We're now going to work with industry so that they can deliver.
Canada is the only NATO country that's not meeting both the NATO investment pledges, the 2% of GDP on defense spending, and at least 20% of the defense budget on equipment and research and development. We're the only NATO country not making it. Why does this DPU not address that lack of commitment?
Yeah, thanks. So, first of all, under this DPU, that beginning next year and every year thereafter, we'll be meeting the 20% commitment for investment in capital expenditure. I would also point out, as I mentioned earlier, in Canada, we do not publish our aspirations. We publish our funded plans. And this document talks about the money that we'll be committing in this upcoming budget in order to bring that forward. I've spoken to our allies. All of them want to continue to encourage us to meet the 2% requirement, but all of them
I have to stop you, Minister. Your entire policy update is aspirational. It's full of exploring options. It's full of reaffirming existing commitments. There are actually very few policy changes in this policy update, unless you hadn't been considering the management of all of these priorities all along. This entire thing is an exercise in aspiration. There are no tangible outcomes that can be measured by dates and specific dollar amounts, other than far down the road, far after another election. So, Minister, this defense update cannot possibly be characterized as anything other than an aspirational document.
Well, $8.1 billion isn't aspirational. It's a budget. And it's got clear plans for when expenditures can be made. Now, I cannot, and frankly, I have some very serious doubts whether any other government would ever make the same type of investment in defense because your record speaks for itself. But what I can tell you is that this is a funded plan that has real dollars and real investments. It has been well received by industry that told us they needed that clarity and certainty, and we've provided it. It's been well received by our allies who see a very strong upward trajectory of defense spending, and near tripling of defense budgets by our Canadian government since the last time another government was responsible for defense spending. And so there is a real clear plan. And if you didn't see it here, I'd invite you to go back and read it again.
We're running out of time, Minister. One more question, just as a reminder for people about the detachment between announcement and reality. On January 10th, your government announced that January 10th, 2023, they announced they would purchase a NASAM system for Ukraine worth $406 million. 1 year ago last week, your predecessor falsely claimed that that system was en route. This was an announcement. These are claims that you make about expenditure, but they haven't happened. Could you tell me on what date will that system be delivered?
Yeah, I can share with you what Ambassador Cohen and the U.S. Department of Defense has shared with us. In order to deliver that system to Ukraine, Canada we already provided all the missiles and systems that we had available to us, but we had to acquire.
Why did predecessor mislead Canadians then and say it was
Mr. Kelly,
en
did
route?
you want an answer to your question?
Well, you're not answering it.
Either way, you're going to get 10 seconds to finish your answer, and then we'll be on to Mr. Fillmore.
Yeah, we finalized the United States finalized their contract with Raytheon to acquire those systems. We're part of that contract, and I have been assured by the U.S. government that Canada's system will be delivered among the very first of those that are ready as they come off the line. They won't be delivered until they're actually made, but as soon as they're made, we'll get them delivered.
Thank you.